Welcome back to Interviews with the Wonderland's authors. And tonight we have Mike Morris. Hello, Mike. How are you? Norris.
I'm all right. I'm kidding. Happens all the time. Do you know what I say to people though? I say to people like if I'm on the phone and I like as in Chuck, and then people know. There you go, see? That's how you
Yeah,
learn it.
okay.
Yeah, no, happens all the time. Honestly, it's fine.
Just after I told you I wouldn't get your name wrong.
All good. All good.
Okay, so tonight would you like to tell us about yourself and your books?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, for anyone who came to Wonderland last year, they might know a little bit. So I'm like fantasy comedy is kind of the realm we're sat in. What I tend to say is it's like some reviews have compared it to Terry Pratchett, and I feel that's like comparing a gourmet dinner to a kebab. But like it's that sort of realm, do you know what I mean? It's like it's sort of
Yeah.
fantasy, a lot of stuff going on in the afterlife. I call the series Chronicles of the Eternal Alcove. The Eternal Alcove being like a pub in the afterlife that's almost like the epicenter of everything. But I also work in mental health as my day job. So while I like to keep it light, I mean, it's difficult to keep books about death light, but like I try my best to keep them light, keep them funny. But there's a lot of, through my own personal mental health experiences and my daily career in mental health, there's a lot woven in around anxiety, low mood, facing your fears, trauma, that sort of thing. So it's a hard to strike, but I like to think people think that I balance it quite well. So yeah.
And what about a normal day for you? What do you do?
A normal day. Do we mean just kind of like if I'm
Yeah, what's like, just a bit more about yourself. You got any hobbies or things you
yeah,
like to do?
yeah, I mean, as you, anyone who's kind of read the last couple of books will realize, obviously, well, any of the books, music is like a massive passion. You'll be able to see behind us loads of kind of like ornaments and statues of like rock stars.
Yeah.
So I love a good gig. Queen are my favorite band of all time. I've finally been able to squeeze some Queen references into the latest book, which is always fun. But yeah, anything around kind of live music. Just out of shot here, I've got like a massive collection of albums that I'll kind of sit and listen to. I'm a massive wrestling fan as well, like absolutely huge. A couple of weeks ago, I was down in Manchester and it was so weird being
So
at
is my son.
for the love of wrestling. It was
Yeah.
amazing. It was amazing. And it's because I do a lot of, when I'm not doing kind of book events, I do Comic Cons. So
Yeah.
it was really strange being at a convention and not being sat behind a table
Yeah.
and kind of going to talk and get me photos with the wrestlers and all that kind of stuff. So so if I'm not writing, I'm listening to music, I'm watching wrestling. Obviously, I mean, I've got a young family, as we were just talking about. There's a chance my 3-year-old
Yeah.
might end up coming in to join us. So I've got a young family to keep me, I was going to say, to keep me sane. I don't think that's the correct term. I think it's probably quite the opposite. Yeah. So I think the irony is, I love to read. I don't actually get a lot of time to read because between writing and the other stuff, it doesn't happen so much. And obviously
No.
my career in mental health keeps me very busy. So
Yeah.
it's just a delicate balance of all of it. And I think work-life balance is so important, to make sure that you're getting that right. And if I come home and I've had a really stressful day, it's lovely to dive into that world, which, that I've created and see what these characters are going to do. Because half the time I don't know until I'm, until I'm,
Yeah, I don't think any of us do.
yeah, I was reading something about, are you a planner or a pantser? And I was like, I like to think I'm a planner, but I'll be tapping away. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, hang on, so this is happening now. So I need to follow them and see
Yeah.
what's going to happen. That's the best way. That's the best way, I think.
Okay, so who's your favourite wrestler?
Mick Foley. So Mankind, I don't know if
Mick
anyone remembers.
Foley.
So this is kind
Mankind.
of old school. I think currently, so if there's any kind of current wrestling fans here, I'm a big Kevin Owens fan. He's injured at the minute.
Yeah.
And I've really championed women's wrestling as well. I think it's something that obviously when I was younger, when I was a teenager, it was a lot about like gratification and boobs and bikinis, this, that, and the other. But I think what's lovely is it's moved on now to, it's like actually women's wrestling is more compelling than men's wrestling. It's like because they feel like they've got something to prove. And so like,
Yeah.
amazing. Like some of my favorite wrestlers are women's wrestlers. But I think overall and I've met him a couple of times, and this does relate to what we're talking, to my author journey a little bit. In that Mick Foley is my favorite wrestler of all time, but he is also an author. So he's a New York Times bestselling author. He wrote his memoirs in the late 90s. They were really successful, and he moved over into fiction about 20 years ago. And he's written 2 books, one called Teeth and Brown and the other called Scooter. And they were huge influences for me in terms of finding my own voice in writing. So they're not similar to my books at all, but I read them and I feel like, yeah, that's absolutely his voice. No one else could have written that book. And I had the opportunity to meet him about 13, 14 years ago. And I said to him, our conversation was more about his books than his wrestling, which was an odd concept for him because it was, he was obviously really invested in the conversation. And I'd said, I would love to write a book. And he was like, well, why not? He was like, just do it. Like, I did it. Like, there's nothing to stop you. Fast forward 2023. I've published a book. I've credited Mick in the foreword of Reap, Sleep, Rock, Repeat for helping inspire me
Yeah.
to write a book. And then last year, I got to meet him again and give him a copy of that book.
Oh, that's amazing.
And just be like, actually, you won't remember this because you'll have met tens of thousands of people since then. But we talked about me writing a book, and here it is. So it was
Yeah,
something
that's
lovely,
really
full
cool.
circle moment. Lovely.
So I like the Hardy Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a massive John Cena fan as well. And The Rock when he was there.
Yeah. The Rock's probably the most famous man on the planet right now, isn't he? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, I know my wife and a friend of ours is really hoping that the Hardy Boys do that for the Love of Wrestling show next year.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I'd love to meet them too, because these are the ones, like I said, they're our childhood, aren't they? Like, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
presuming we're the same age. It sounds like we are from the wrestlers we're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
and I think again, obviously these are books that are coming up, but one of the characters in my books before he died was a professional wrestler. So then I'm starting to kind of explore that part of my fandom in the new books that I'm
Yeah.
writing about his career as a wrestler and how that's made him the Reaper he is
Yeah.
and all of this sort of stuff.
I'm surprised Joel's is not the Undertaker.
But mine's not the Undertaker.
Yeah.
He isn't it? I love
I
the Undertaker.
expected you to say that. I was the Undertaker. I didn't expect Mick.
But I mean, to be fair, how can you not love the Undertaker? That's absolutely. But I mean, if you think
Yeah.
both his and Mick Foley's most famous match of all time involved the Undertaker throwing Mick Foley 15 feet off a massive cage. And then
Yeah.
the side of that's just like, Jesus, bloody hell. And I think that's the thing, that when you're a kid, you think they're superheroes, then you get they're fake. It's all fake. And that's actually a bit of a running thing in the book that I'm writing at the
Yeah.
moment. If Flex, who is the deceased wrestler, gets told that wrestling is fake, it's the only thing that'll make him angry. So but again, you've got to respect them putting their bodies on the line, and this is kind of what I always say to all of them. Like, again, it sounds a bit sobering, but when you're at events like we're talking about, and you'll see some of them in wheelchairs or walking with a limp, or that they've
Yeah,
really
exactly.
dedicated so much to entertain people. And obviously, I'm doing that in a much less physical way. But again, it's about giving.
Yeah.
That's what writing is. It's giving everything that you've got to entertain people and to hopefully have a bit of escapism from what's going on and settle into a good book.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could pick one of your characters, who would you spend a whole day with and what would you do?
It's got to be Tom, hasn't it? It's got to be Tom. So Tom, again, for anyone who's maybe not read my books, Tom is, his nickname is the Rock and Roll Reaper. So essentially the story of the Reap, Sleep, Rock, Repeat trilogy is that Ben, the protagonist, is hit by a bus that was driven by Tom. And then he gets to appeal his death in the afterlife. And it's the journey of that. When I was writing the books, I felt like Ben was me. Obviously, he suffered social anxiety, panic attacks, all these things that I dealt with kind of throughout my 20s. And when people have read the books, I expected people I know to go, oh yeah, I can see that you're Ben. And they're all like, you're Tom. And they're like, you're Tom. And that's a lovely thing because I love Tom so much. And I think, to give you an idea, obviously he's in the usual Reaper garb, but he wears a Motorhead t-shirt underneath. He's wearing Hawaiian shorts. He's just a cool guy. We've got very similar music tastes, as you can imagine. And so again, he's like Motorhead, Maiden, Reap, Sleep, Rock, Repeat is the mixtape that's in the bus that he listens to as he drives. So that's where the name of the books comes from. And he's just, I think underneath all of that, like what I love about him when I write him is that when people meet him at first, they rarely like him. So you get this feel that people are like, oh, who's this guy? But by the end, they love him. Do you know what I mean? By the end, on this really lovely relationship with him. And I don't think, to be fair, that I would have that issue. I think that we would get on very well, very quickly. And I think what's lovely is people have connected with that. I read a review of the first one recently where someone said, I became so invested in this book that when it's my time, I want Tom to come and get me. And I thought, like, that's such a, like, there's a sadness to that, but there's also just like, it's a lovely thought that it's like, people are like, well, I wrote to overcome or try and overcome my own death anxiety. And maybe it's kind of helping other people with that a little bit too. So yeah, Tom's the answer, 100%.
So what's the biggest challenge you face writing this book?
As in the one I'm writing currently, or just generally the series, or?
Well, either, whatever you want.
So I've just released Fire and Rain, which is the third of the trilogy. So there's Reap, Sleep, Rock, Repeat, there's Turn to Dust, and then there's Fire and Rain. And I describe Turn and Dust, and this is very much a Marvel reference if people watch the Marvel movies. It's my like Avengers Infinity War, like If
Yeah.
anyone's seen that film, like Thanos wins the day and it's miserable, and you come out the cinema and you're like, what was that? And Turn to Dust is a little bit like that it's like the bad guys win. That's a little bit of a spoiler, perhaps, but it's like things don't go the way that
So
they.
it's my dog.
I thought you were saying don't give spoilers, but things maybe don't go the way that you would hope. I don't. And it's to
That's okay then.
there's a point where a colleague of mine who loves the books, like colleague I work with, and she's actually really angry with me about the second book because she doesn't like how it went. The third book, Fire and Rain, I feel is more redemptive, and it's kind of like trying to sew these things together, and it's trying to finish Ben's story and all that kind of stuff. But I think the challenge with that, and again, this probably goes back to Tom a little bit, is like obviously part of Tom's makeup, which it might not sound like it when we talk about the fact that he's this kind of rock and roll reaper, is that he served in the military during World War One and he died in battle. And that's explored a bit further in the third book. Again, I don't want to say too much for anyone that's reading it or anything like that, but it is something that is explored. And there is kind of a trigger warning at the start of that book that if you have served in the military or you do experience flashbacks or any kind of sort of post-traumatic stress disorder, to just be mindful when you're kind of reading those chapters. And I
Yeah.
found it was so, bearing in mind that I try to make these books funny, and I think Fire and Rain does this dance between bits that people find laugh out loud funny and then something that's devastatingly heartbreaking, sometimes in the same chapter. And I think what I found is there was a particular part of Tom's story that I was writing, and I suffered from panic attacks in my 20s. I've not had one for about 16 years, and I had to stop writing because I thought I was going to have one. And I was in a room on my own
No.
writing. And I had to stop and walk away from it. And I consulted a couple of
Yeah.
other author friends that I know, and I said this, and it was really profound. One of them had said, that's how you know you're writing something that means something. And they were like, just
Yeah.
take time away from it, come back to it, look at it again. I still find that hard to read, but it's probably one of the chapters I'm most proud of. And I think that's the challenge. If
Yeah.
it's anything that hits on, and obviously I've not served in the military, I don't suffer from PTSD, but anything that kind of hits on kind of strong emotion, mental health, anxiety, and it is, but certainly in these first three books, it's a massive theme that has been challenging to write. And I know my editor won't mind me saying that when I sent her the first book to be edited, I didn't know her from Adam. I was like, could you edit my book, please? She's since told me that she nearly turned it down because she read the first chapter, which is about Ben having a panic attack, and she said it felt too real. It felt too real, and I didn't think that I'd be able to do it. But then, as she continued reading, she was like, "No, I've got to work on this book." And we've got an amazing relationship. And like she came to Wonderland last year, and she comes to events, and like she's edited all three books and is hopefully available to do the next one. So I think that's it. I think it's almost, for lack of a better word, when it feels a bit too real. And it's like, considering that it's a fantasy book as well, sometimes it's like, I just need to walk away from this for a moment and remember where I am and ground myself and then come back.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on tonight
No
and
worries.
letting everyone know about your books and yourself. I look forward to seeing you at Wonderland,
Absolutely.
and I will see you in a little while in Wonderland Group.
Sounds good. Catch you
Okay.
then.
Thanks. All right then.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.